So, tell me about how you got into wildlife rescue. This is Linda, everyone. This
Hello,
is Linda.
everybody.
Linda in Bundy.
I joined Wires back in 1988,
Mm.
and initially I was a snake catcher. I went and did the snake catching courses, so I became a snake catcher. But then in 1990, they had an event of some sort in Sydney where lots and lots of baby flying foxes came into care, and they were desperate for people to raise them because they didn't have enough carers in Sydney. So a bunch of us piled into a car up in the mountains, and we drove down to Sydney, and we did a crash course of an hour or so in a building, a whole big bunch of us women. I think there might have been some men too, not sure, a long time ago. And at the end of that course, we were handed a baby bat and sent on our way.
No vaccinations.
No, there was no vaccinations back then. That happened in 96, I think they brought in those laws.
And nobody died.
Nobody died. I'd been out doing rescues. I picked up micros. We didn't have flying foxes up in the Blue Mountains at that time. They are found up there now, thank God, global warming. Anyway, I came home with this little bat. I named him Boris. And we used Wambaroo milk only, Wambaroo bat milk. I remember I used to mix it up and put cream in it and freeze it in ice cubes in the freezer. And back in those days, we used to actually wrap our bats. We used to use men's hankies, and we would put the bat on the cloth, head up that end on the hanky, and then we would fold a little bit of paper between its legs to make like a little nappy, and then you would fold your bat into your cloth so they were like a little Indian papoose and they couldn't move. And that's how your bat spent its time, unable to move. And I had my little cat carry cage with a heat pad in the bottom, and we didn't have thermostatically controlled ones back then either, so you had to raise and lower your little bat and have lots of thermometers in there to keep track of the temperature. We didn't have any books to follow. I think I met with some people once or twice a month to get a bit of advice on what to do next. We introduced, I remember we were doing steamed apple, but my bat Boris didn't like steamed apple,
No.
so he went straight to fresh apple. And what I would do was actually chew it, and I let some dribble down my face, and he would lick the dribble, and then he went straight to fresh apple, so he was really good that way. And then I would hang him on the curtains in my lounge room until he flew to me. And then eventually he got big enough to where he was going to go to creche, but I had a bit of a family emergency, so I had to hand him in 1 week early to creche, which was at Sonia's house. Sonia was quite well known in the community, and she was with the Blue Mountains branch where I was, west of Sydney. And I came down to Sonia's and handed in my Boris to creche, and I went off for my emergency that was up in Queensland at the time. And you were allowed to visit your baby once only at creche. And when I came back from my trip, I went down to the aviary to see him, and I remember calling out his name, and he came charging across the aviary to me, and I was able to put my finger in and say hello to him, and then I had a good cry as I walked away. So that was my very first bat. 1991, he was in creche.
Boris.
And Boris, yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, he was beautiful. He was a very big boy when I handed him in.
Well fed.
Oh yeah, he had done well, and
Yes.
I loved him to bits, and that got me hooked. So I did bats after that. I moved to Port Macquarie and joined a group there and did bats there as well. And then in 96 I stopped, and that was when the vaccinations and that all came in. I didn't know that. That all happened that year. And then I started doing bats again 4 years ago up here in Bundaberg,
Right.
and I've raised quite a few babies since then.
And you do other stuff, so what's the scope of your...
Well, I don't catch snakes anymore because I'm turning 61 shortly, and you need to be young and fit for that. I was 24 when I first joined Wires and was doing snakes, so that's a long time ago.
And you've got a dicky knee.
And I have a dicky knee, and yeah, my shoulders. I'm getting arthritis. You get old. So I will do non-venomous snakes, but I will not do venomous anymore. That's on my no list. And we've got some great snake catchers locally, so I leave it to them. I will pick up lizards and turtles, so that's my reptile thing. But I do everything from possums and gliders, to, which I will raise possums and I will raise gliders. I will stabilise kangaroos and wallabies that come in, but I pass them out to specialist carers for those particular animals. I will stabilise echidnas, but again, they've got to go to a specialist carer. And I do birds of prey mainly. So that's my great love.
And any other bird that needs rescuing, like
will
the
go-
magpie yesterday.
Yeah, I will go out and rescue anything, but I've got a lot of carers who do the various different species, so I pass them on to other carers in most
Yes.
cases.
I mean, little Ducky was only with us for 6 hours or something,
Yeah.
if that.
Yeah. Little 1-day-old, 2-day-old duckling. Yeah, I've got a lady who's really great with ducklings, so I send them all to her.
Perry Pee-wee went.
Yeah.
Oh no, he was with us overnight though, wasn't
Yes.
he? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You do it all.
I sort of do it all, don't I?
Yeah. And what does it do for you?
I love what I do.
Why?
For me, okay, you get a lot of losses, an awful lot of losses,
Right.
but the releases is what gets it for me. When you can take an animal out and see it fly off or slither off or run off into the forest, that's just really, really satisfying.
Yeah. The pluses outweigh the minuses.
Absolutely.
One really good release buoys you up for an entire week.
Yeah.
You know,
And
something.
when you have a really satisfying rescue too, where you think, oh, how am I going to do this?
And you do it.
And you do it, and then the animal lives, and it's like, wow, I did that.
Yeah. I know, it's really fulfilling.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
very fulfilling.
Yeah.
If anyone ever thought about doing rescuing, if you've got the time and like it's expensive, but I love it. I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
I'm quite like you in a lot of ways. I love the rescue. I'm happy to do the intensive care, but I don't want to do weeks and weeks of rehab simply because I don't have the space or the situation to do it. But also I like to be free. I like to be able to get up in the morning and have a varied day.
I've had animals in here that I've had to feed every 3 hours round the clock. I had a little 49-gram possum come in, and he was living down my top, and he was fed every 3 hours around the clock, and I was a zombie after a couple of weeks. Thank God he went to 4 hourly, and then finally 5, and then 6. But I raised him through to 550 grams. He went to another woman, and he got released.
Excellent.
So yeah,
It's worth it.
it is worth it.
Yeah, but it's getting harder and harder. The older you get, the harder it gets.
Yeah, it does get harder.
Yeah. Anything to say to anyone?
No, just if you want to rescue, go out and do it.
But be realistic.
Be realistic. You're going to lose a lot of animals, and you're going to think, oh my God, I'm never going to get good at this, but then something will live and make it all worthwhile. And make sure you have good mentors, people to teach you.
Thank you, Linda.